Given the fact that it is the Buddhist tradition that necessarily informs contemporary mindfulness, it is essential to familiarize ourselves with its original meaning to ensure reliability in our understanding. In its original dispensation, the word mindfulness is a translation of the ancient Pali term sati. Now, the term sati actually derives from the root to remember or to recollect. However, as a mental factor, what it actually signifies is a presence of mind or observation in the present, as opposed to the conventional understanding of memory as relating to past events or the retaining of information. And so what we're talking about is a non-superficial and very natural mode of awareness which necessitates the absence of clinging to any particular set of circumstances or mind events. What it is not, however, is a form of mental description. For example, if we observe the quality of a leaf with mindfulness, we do not generate a kind of inner dialogue, such as, wow, this is a magnificent, beautiful, and crisp green leaf with gentle veins that glide through its core as the light shimmers on its luscious surface. Instead, we are simply seeing, knowing. And so this is why it's often described more as a form of bare awareness, a term with which you may already be familiar. In other words, what we have is a very purposeful and intentional apprehension of whatever enters the field of awareness without any judgments or evaluations whatsoever. As a result, and it does require a little bit of effort, especially at first, we are able to comprehend clearly the conditions of our experience at any given time, sampajanya. And so we can think of it as a returning of the mind to a more natural and luminous state. Now, when we do this, we are better able to understand the nature of what is occurring from a place of healthy detachment, from a distance. We simply observe. And it is this very capacity to observe then, equanimously, that will support us in areas like self-regulation, emotional intelligence, and compassion for others. In other words, because we are not identified with these inevitable fluctuations of the body and mind, we're in a position to make more grounded and wholesome choices for our lives. I like to use the example of traffic on a busy road as we wait to cross. Yes, we observe the vehicles, the movement, colour, speed, as and when they come into the awareness. But we do not find ourselves burdened by these qualities. We do not carry the characteristics of each car with us for the rest of the day, wasting mental energy ruminating on speculations about each driver, or what their life is like, and where they might be going and such. Instead, we are simply aware of the phenomena, as and when we come into contact with it, before instantly and effortlessly letting go as soon as it's no longer perceived. At no point, however, during this process do we lose sight of our original intention to cross. And so in a similar sense, when we are established in mindfulness, we observe the varying subjective phenomena that comes into the awareness before letting go as it naturally subsides, and without losing sight of our original intention to understand and to know. And so as a brief summary, what we know about mindfulness is that it A, involves firm and fixed attention on a particular object of contemplation, B, is underpinned by the intention to gain insight into the nature of that object, and C, facilitates our ability to clearly comprehend what we experience without evaluation so that we don't become caught by or identified with it. Now, that's not all. Mindfulness also serves another very important function of which we must also be aware, and that is the function of protection. Now, what do we mean by protection? Well, when we first start to develop this quality of awareness, we're going to find that the mind likes to wander a lot. And of course, we may already know that the brain is actually hardwired for a negativity bias. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing. It's simply an evolutionary mechanism which keeps us alert to any threats which may harm our well-being. However, when negative manifestations persist in the mind over a period of time, they can and will drain our ability to strengthen and sustain present moment awareness. Now, in addition to the very obvious sensory stimuli, which will at times cause some distraction, we can actually be quite specific about the kind of things that the mind needs protection from if it is to remain firm. And these are feelings of ill will or hatred towards others, lethargy or tiredness in the system, restlessness, worry and anxiety, doubt or uncertainty over our abilities, and finally any unrestrained desire or craving for external pleasures. It's important to note here that these categories are not determined by virtue of their moral character. These are very normal and very natural processes that even the most mindful individual will experience. But we can almost certainly agree that the overpresence of such qualities can and does reduce our energy, along with our overall ability to stay present. And so establishing mindfulness is about providing the mind with an alternative point of focus so that we can create the conditions for the development of more positive qualities, things like compassion, concentration, understanding, patience, and generally more wholesome patterns of thought. To give you an example, think about when we scroll on social media without any particular goal. It is likely that we may unintentionally be dragged into the apprehension of divisive or negative content. Now, we didn't mean to end up here, yet the mind is consciously or subconsciously absorbing this stimuli. Now, because the algorithms are designed to keep us inside these streams, we can and will get locked in. As a result, not only do we lose a significant amount of time in our day, but we increase the chances of falling into combative interactions, which, when left unchecked, might even extend to those we care about. In any event, we generally come away feeling drained, annoyed, and maybe even a little more pessimistic about life, even though we didn't set out to experience any of these things in the beginning. And so through this example, we can see just how important it is to be able to train and strengthen the mind, to guard the mind. It is essential that we have reliable, sustainable, and practical methods to be able to ensure that the mind remains calm. This will help us to remain alert, aware, and regulated in our own body and mind. As a result, we learn to respond naturally, productively, and more compassionately, regardless of the situation or circumstances before us.